those sort of last 6 to 9 months that you touched on, and you'd noticed his deterioration at that point, did you have any other support, any outside support? Obviously, I'm sure friends were there for you through the whole length, but did you have any additional support from other outside agencies, hospice, um, palliative care teams coming perhaps to your home or offering any respite or anything? How did that work for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting thing, really, that it was only in the last 3 weeks before Kevin's passing that we actually had the local hospice team come in, because it was only in the June of 2021 we had, I think it was about 18 months prior, Kevin had actually said, can I get a referral to Basingstoke, which is the other hospital that deal with this condition, because and we'd seen them and they agreed that he wasn't a candidate for the procedure, but they had said, if you get to a point where quality of life's impaired, we can do a procedure which will extend your life and it return some quality of life. So Kevin had very much got his, he'd pinned a lot on that. And we both had thought, great, there's something. And again, unfortunately, the effect of COVID, not seeing your oncologist in person, he'd sort of, this sort of time, 2021, he'd said to his oncologist, can we reach out to the Basingstoke Hospital, because I'd like to explore having this sort of interim procedure, please. And we saw the oncologist in the June, and she said, we've not heard back. She said, but I think you need to prepare yourself that you are not going to get the answer that you're hoping for. And I remember looking at Kevin and him looking like just a deer in the headlights. And I just said, can I ask why that is? I said, is that because it's not believed that he'll survive the procedure or that he won't be able to recover post-op? And she said, well, both. And we were like, okay. And she said, the chemo, we need to stop now because we think we've run its course. And that's when she said, I've always said, I'll be honest, you're now terminal. And we went, okay. And we said, how long? And she said, a few months. At that point, that's when other things kicked in. So that's when our local hospice is a place called Catherine House, who are wonderful. But it was really only until sort of mid-July that we started having them coming out and going, right, we've got time. We're going to start getting the meds that we need in place. We can order you a bed. So if you want to stay at home, we can have you here. And so, yeah, and then it was, so it's a very interesting situation, certainly for the situation with Kevin and myself, in that we only really had that for about 3 weeks, and they weren't coming in every day because Kevin didn't need that kind of care. He was still, yes, he needed more support from me, but he still was able to get himself up and go to the bathroom, and again, good moments, not so good moments. We'd had the GP out just the week before he passed, talk about what your resuscitation preference is and things like that. So we'd gone through that. And we'd only had the hospice team coming in for about maybe a week or so, because at that summer was incredibly hot. They were like the 30 plus degrees. And Kevin just happened to be struggling to take, to kind of take and keep down water, because this adds a lot of jelly-like substance to your peritoneal cavity, so it starts to almost suffocate. So he was finding it difficult to sort of swallow water, which meant he couldn't take his pain meds and things like that. So they said, well, what we'll do is we'll start giving these things intravenously until you get to a point where you can start to take them normally. And so that was the only reason that we'd had some nurses coming in, was to kind of get him over this period where extreme temperatures, easy to dehydrate. Let's get the pain meds in. Let's make sure he's feeling nice and comfortable. Very much as just an interim, and then starting to put everything in place for this longer term plan for sort of the next 3 to 6 months. And they were amazing. And the only other thing they were doing is, because this, I've often said to people, I suppose, not that I've ever been pregnant myself, but I suppose I've often said to people, I guess it's the equivalent of a woman being pregnant. When they're heavily pregnant, it puts so much strain on your back because you're carrying all this excess weight. Well, that was the thing that was happening. So he's getting more and more back pain, bless him. And so, yeah, the nurses were coming in sometimes to administer, again, nothing, not particularly high dose, but give him some kind of IV painkilling injection to just help make him a little bit more comfortable. But again, it was very much, this is just an interim thing until you can start to kind of, do things more normally. So the experience that we had was very short. It was very intense. It was very much this is just a thing we're doing right now. It's a bit of a blip, and we're starting to get everything in place for what we may or may not need going forward. So yeah, it was a very different experience than I know many people have, where I know some of my friends with family have had those teams on a much more structured, protracted basis. That just wasn't our experience, really.
Mm-hmm. So in those last in those last few days, did you know that it was his last few days?
No, no.
So it just felt very normal to you. So how did his death unfold for you in that last few hours, in those days?
Yeah, I mean, really, his death unfurled in about 20 minutes. It was that quick.
Wow.
And in the moment, I didn't know what was happening. Without going into loads of kind of, minute detail, I didn't know if he was having a stroke. I didn't know if he was having a reaction to a medication. I certainly did not in that moment think, this is it. I genuinely didn't. And yeah, between a nurse coming in to administer a painkilling injection and having two teams of paramedics in my house confirming he died, it was less than 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the nurse hadn't seen anything unusual either. So that is really quick.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Are you, I won't say happy, but does it feel better for you to have had that happen quickly? Or would you have, I don't know, would it have felt more easily digestible if it would have taken a bit longer?
Yeah, it's a strange one because, and obviously I've thought about it a lot, and I suppose as well, because I had the experience of my mum's passing. Again, whilst we knew she was terminal pretty much from the outset, she was only in a hospice for 3 days. There was a certain degree of speed with it, but I did know I was, for like 48 hours, my dad and I were waiting for the call.
Yeah.
With my dad, again, it was all very rapid. Obviously much quicker than how things were with my mum, because of the nature of why he'd been in hospital. But again, there was this sort of 24-hour period of, oh, okay, I might end up getting a call. It's been an interesting thing with Kevin in that this anticipatory grief, and because of the experience that I went through with my mum, I had it in my head, and also because of the conversations we'd had with the hospice team, I thought the way it would unfurl is that he would probably be in the bed. It would be probably in our kitchen dining room area. There'd be some warning, probably from the team, to kind of go, it's getting close. And that would have given me the chance to, I wouldn't say speak with him, because it's a funny thing. And I remember talking to people about this since my mum passed. I don't know how other people are, but I think in my experience, it's never like the movies. If somebody's terminal, if somebody's been told they're terminal, I certainly have never felt that I could initiate that conversation, because to me it would be, it's like you're saying, I no longer have hope for your life. If my mum had initiated that conversation, it would have been very different. And it was the same way I thought if Kevin ever initiated that conversation, then I will go with it. But it's not for me to start that goodbye process, because that would feel preemptive. But I thought if he was unconscious, I might be able to say some things to him. I'd envisaged I would be sitting next to him. I'd probably be holding his hand. These were the things that had been part of this movie. And in reality, what happened was, because of the circumstances, I don't know when he took his last breath, but I was next to him. I had my arm around him. His head was here, and he was in an embrace. And whatever moment he took that last breath, I like to think that he knew that I was physically there. I was with him. And, much as he wasn't perfect, much as I'm not perfect, much as our marriage was not perfect, one thing we always had each other's backs in anything and everything. And in that moment, I literally had his back. I was there. And much as those moments were confusing and bewildering, and elements of it were quite traumatic, once I kind of had got past the shock of what had happened, I am unbelievably grateful that I had the blessing and the opportunity to have that physical closeness with him in that moment. Because if it had played out the way I'd envisaged, or in a similar manner to how I lost my mum and dad, at most it would have been hold of the hand. And I find it obviously incredibly moving. I find it incredibly poignant. I find it incredibly reassuring and massively comforting that because it played out as it did, it gave me something. And hopefully, I really hope that it gave Kevin something in that moment, which was incredibly powerful and comforting to him too.
Absolutely, Sal, and I truly believe that he knew that you were there, that his head was on your shoulder, and that he found enormous comfort in that. I don't doubt that for a moment. What a perfect way to close your eyes and take your last breath with the person that you love the most. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that moment. I feel very moved by it myself. So, wow.
But I think that's been one of my biggest lessons. And I'm not saying I wouldn't say that I've got it and I'm walking it, all the time. But definitely what I learned from that is to try and let go of expectation.
Absolutely. It never plays out as we envisage. It just unfolds how it unfolds, and we do what we do in that moment, and that is just how it's meant to be.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, for some people, they're not there for the last breaths.
Yeah.
They've nipped to the loo. They've asked somebody to come and sit with them while they pop to the shop or take a quick walk. And again, I truly believe that was what that person wanted. They didn't want them to
Yes.
be there for that last breath. And it's so, for some people, it can be comforting to hear that is how it should have unfolded. Or I suppose there's no shoulds in it in life, but
It is.
that
Yeah.
is just how it was and how it was meant to be.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you, Sal, for sharing that. So sort of finishing up now and sort of bringing this conversation to a beautiful end, which you've already done. Is there any little sort of snippets of wisdom, I don't know, that you might be able to share with anybody listening in from your experience? Don't worry if there's not. I know that you will think of something after I've gone. And if you do, I can just put that in a piece of writing. Kind of puts people on the spot, but
I suppose the thing I found was that, with Kevin's prognosis, and I say, given that I knew there was all this fear and anxiety and worry, and and I did reach out to look at counselling, because I've had counselling, bereavement counselling after my dad died, which was hugely beneficial. And And I explored it through my work, and I explored it through my GP. And unfortunately, I kind of have described it as, I think my situation, whilst not unique, kind of felt like it was a bit on the too hard pile. So both these two very lovely counsellors tried to be supportive, but really kind of came up with empathy, and then almost like it felt like a platitude of, well, prioritise self-care. And I think for anybody in that sort of situation, you know, I was juggling a full-time job, trying to look after the house, increasingly doing more of that single-handedly. The carer role becoming more and more. It's like, how do I prioritise self-care in the middle of this? It just felt like you're asking me to do something that's just, you know, and had no tangibles to it. And so I ended up not pursuing that. I just thought, this doesn't feel like a fit for me. You know, I could end up coming to these sessions and actually it's not going to be beneficial. And so I ended up actually tapping into a coach instead, who was great and actually gave me things to do so I could feel like I was, you know, yeah, give me clues. Don't just give me a vagueness. I need specifics. And I just think that, and a lot of people, you know, will come up with maybe suggestions of what to do or how to do things. I think my only, you know, bit of wisdom maybe is trust your gut. If something feels like it's going to help you, whether it's that day or that week or that month or throughout your experience, do it. No matter how well intentioned somebody else is, you know, if somebody suggests something and you experience it and you're thinking, I don't think this is actually going to help me, it's going to be more of a hindrance. Just trust your gut. Because at the end of the day, there is no roadmap for any of this. There's no handy guidebook that we can go to, which is why I value so much what you're doing. Is, you know, that there is no one way. You know, our relationships are unique. We are individually unique. We can share experience. We can, you know, take hints and tips and try them out. But I just think if you're trying something and it's not working for you, just trust your gut. And you know, no one thing is ever a one size fits all. So, you know, don't feel compelled to follow something because somebody else is telling you that's the way to do it. You've got to go with what feels right for you, because only you're the one who's living it in that moment, and only you know what's going to work for you. And it might be a bit of trial and error, but that's okay.
A great bit of wisdom there, Sal. Thank you. And, you know, I'm sure that bit of wisdom will actually, you know, just land with people and think, oh, yeah, that's so right.
I think it's easy to feel you're doing it wrong. I think that's the thing.
Oh, it is.
You know, we're so self-critical, and when you're in a situation that's so emotionally charged,
Yeah.
and you want the absolute best for this person who is so significant for you in whatever that relationship is, and you're trying to help them navigate what they're dealing with as smoothly and as painlessly and as with as much love as you can, and you're dealing with your stuff. I know for me it's fear and anxiety and worry and overwhelm and all these things, and feeling a pressure. I definitely felt a pressure of like, I need to try and let him have these experiences as much as possible. I need to try and be present in these moments. I need to remember, and I was putting so much pressure on myself. That we kind of, I think we naturally sort of inclined to beat ourselves up a little bit. And the truth is that, you know, we're all dealing with it in the best way we can with what we've got in the moment. And cliche though it is, I think we do, in those moments, you do need to try and speak to yourself the way you would speak to a dear friend. And if you're struggling to do that, and I know I have, and I know I still continue in my own way to be very, as my coach often says, put the hammer down. You need to have people around you that will do that for you and kind of hold the mirror up and go, do you know what, you're being way too hard on yourself. You know, you're doing the best you can, and that's all that you can do. And whatever you're doing, you know, that's enough.
Yeah.
Everything that you're doing, everything you're attempting to do, everything you're trying to do, even if it doesn't work out, it's enough, because you're coming to it with the right intention. You're coming to it from a place of love and wanting the best thing for that person that you love with all your heart.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect place to finish, Sal. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your journey with Kevin. And I'd like to thank Kevin for, yeah, just for, being Kevin and yeah, what a amazing relationship you had together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Sal, for sharing so openly and so authentically. And I'm pretty sure that's going to help.
I do hope so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will. It's very moving with your story. Um, yeah, and I really appreciate the time you've taken today. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Nancy.